Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Loren Hawkinsmith from Hold the Line Defense Solutions here. Want to go over the 5 universal gun safety laws with you today and make sure that you practice, you study these laws, and you practice them anytime you're going to handle a firearm or you come across a firearm, because these are the laws that will keep you and everyone around you safe from having what could be a catastrophic accident, okay? So rule number 1 is we're going to assume that every gun we come across is loaded and we're going to treat it as such. So it doesn't matter if you were the last person to handle that gun and you think no one's touched it since, right? If you come across a firearm, just assume it is loaded and then you're going to treat it as such. The next 4 laws are how you treat it as such, right? So law number 2, do not point the muzzle at anything you're not willing to destroy. So a lot of times in our classes, in our basic pistol classes, I always ask people, listen, whenever I hand you this training gun, so right here I have one of our plastic training guns. It's like a $6 airsoft gun that we use in class a lot for learning techniques. Even if you put an airsoft pellet in here, I've tried it out. I don't think this thing could shoot an airsoft pellet more than 4 feet. Like, this is a crappy training gun. But I always ask people, listen, treat this as if it's a real gun. That way you can develop good habits, muscle memory, right? And you'll end up doing the same habits with a real gun that you do with this one. And so the second law is you're never going to point the muzzle, the end of the barrel here where the bullet exits from, right? We're never going to point that at anything you're not willing to destroy. So a lot of times in classes I see it where I'm saying, hey, make sure you treat this as if it's real, and people will take the gun and they will point it like this straight down at their foot, right? And I say, listen, you're willing to destroy your foot? Are you willing to put a bullet through your foot? Then you shouldn't be pointing it there, right? Or a lot of times what people do is when they go to get a grip on the gun, they'll take their hand and they'll go in front of the muzzle with their hand. You never want to go in front of the muzzle. So whenever you're adding your other hand, come up from underneath, okay? You can go over the top like this if you're racking the slide or something, but you never go in front of the muzzle whenever you are doing any kind of manipulation with the gun. So with that said, rule number 1, assume every gun is loaded and treated as such. Rule number 2, never point the muzzle at anything you're not willing to destroy. Rule number 3 is you want to keep your finger high off of the trigger, right? So you want to have it high on the frame here like this, very high and pronounced, because a lot of times what happens is people get lazy with this trigger finger and it sneaks down here, right? And you know, if you go to move suddenly or anything happens where this finger can get inside the trigger guard, and we could have a catastrophe on our hands, right? So keep that finger high on the frame like this at all times whenever you're not, your sights are not aligned, you've not made the decision to shoot. You want to keep your finger off the trigger, high on the frame of the gun, up on the slide here, right? Okay, so rule number 1, we're going to assume every gun that we come across is loaded. We're going to treat it as such. The next 2 rules are the ones that if we don't break these 2, right, we'll probably have a good day. Never point the muzzle at anything you're not willing to destroy. Keep your finger on the frame of the gun, off the trigger, right, until you are ready to shoot. All right, so rule number 4 is we're going to keep the gun unloaded until we're ready to use it. Now this is the rule that has an exception to it. So if you are a concealed carrier, that would be the exception. And some people don't like carrying with around the chamber, and I understand that. I would encourage you to look into that and study it a little more and get more comfortable with that. If you are carrying the gun on you and you have the proper holster that's covering the trigger guard and the trigger, and you have the proper equipment, I think that carrying a gun for protection with around the chamber is probably the best way to go, but you do you, right? You do what you're comfortable with, but just from studying this as much as I have and how long it takes from when someone decides they need a gun to protect their life or someone else's life, you don't often have a lot of time to where you'd be able to rack the slide and get around the chamber. So I'd recommend, if you're concealed carrying, first of all, practice a ton, get the right equipment so that there's no negligent discharges, right? And when you feel comfortable doing so and you have the right equipment, start carrying with the round in the chamber. Just my 2 cents, take it for what it's worth. But other than that, make sure that any guns that you have are unloaded until you're ready to use them, right? So magazine's out, you rack the slide a whole bunch of times, make sure that the chamber's cleared. And as far as racking the slide, I always recommend doing it 3 times, okay? So if you did it once and you forgot to take the magazine out, you've now just chambered a round even if there wasn't one in there. When you do it a second time, what you're doing is you're getting rid of that, you're extracting that first round so that if you happen to accidentally put a round in the chamber, when you do it that second time, you should be notified because you'll hear the round hitting the ground, right? And you'll know, oops, I missed a step here and I've actually loaded the gun when I didn't mean to. The third time's just the safety check, right? So if you rack the slide 3 times, there should be no chance in the world that you've not been notified if you made a mistake, and as if there's a round in the chamber still, right? The other exception to this rule would be if you have your bedside gun, right? Like a gun for home protection. And in this case, I don't get paid any money for endorsing this, but there's a safe out there I'm a fan of. It's called Vaultek, V-A-U-L-T-E-K, I believe. But it's a biometric safe, runs off fingerprints. And so my wife and I are able to program all 10 of my fingerprints in there, all 10 of her fingerprints. It gives us access to our firearms right next to our bedside. It gives us access to them in half a second or less, right? And in a panic, chances of you remembering a code, to punch in a code to get your gun, probably decrease a lot because your ability to rationally think decreases, right? But if for some reason the biometric portion isn't working, it does have the ability to have a code programmed in. And lastly, there's a key for it. So there's 3 ways to get in the safe, and it just provides the most safety to keep guns and firearms away from our kids and anyone else we don't want to have access to them, but gives us the most ample opportunity to access our firearms as quickly as possible whenever we need them. All right, so rule number 4, keep your firearms unloaded until you are ready to use them. All right. Rule number 5, know what's in front of, behind, and beside your target. And this rule is important for many reasons, but when you're out at the range, a lot of times what will happen is you just go out and you go to practice and you see your target and you're not thinking what is on the other side of it. In fact, here in the background, you can see one of our containers that we have here at the range, and we've had people set up targets before that were in line. They were in line with that as the backdrop, and so they were only thinking what's in front of the target, and they're looking at it and they know it's a safe shot because there's nothing that they don't want to shoot accidentally between them and the target, but they didn't think, oh my goodness, what is on the other side? And so I've had to stop people from setting up targets because I don't want holes in the container, right? Conversely, right? Like you have to think, if I had to take a self-defense shot, if I had to take a shot at an active shooter, what is on the other side of that target? Which leads me into a little bit of ammunition fundamentals. So when you're out here at the range, full metal jackets are great range rounds for practicing out here. But you don't want to carry full metal jacket rounds, cartridges, in your carry gun. You want to carry JHPs, jacketed hollow points, to make sure that the chance of that round over penetrating your target. So oftentimes whenever a full metal jacket hits soft tissue, so you shoot me, I'm Mr. Bad Guy, you shoot me in the shoulder, chances of a full metal jacket round, like a range round, going through my shoulder and out the other side, very high, right? Chances of a jacketed hollow point going out the other side decrease greatly. And the thing is, the jacketed hollow point's going to expand. It's going to lose tons of momentum. So even if that round penetrates through Mr. Bad Guy's body, chances of it doing damage on the other side have decreased greatly, right? But you have to, it's that risk reward, right? You have to make a decision if you can take a shot and know what's on the other side of that target. So sometimes it's simply a matter of changing your angle so that the way and the direction you're shooting is safe on the other side. And you also have to know what's beside your target. Hey, the best people in the world miss. Shooting firearms, especially pistols, is not an easy thing. So you have to be aware of, if I miss and I shoot left or right, what is beside the target as well. So with all that said, keep these 5 universal safety gun laws in mind whenever you're handling a firearm, whenever you go out to the range, whenever you're at home handling it, and just make sure that you're always going through this checklist in your mind to make sure that you are following these to a T to avoid a potentially catastrophic event, something very bad happening to you or someone you love, right? Number 1, assume every firearm you come across is loaded and treat it as such. Number 2, don't point the muzzle at anything you're not willing to destroy. Number 3, keep that finger off the trigger, high onto the frame or the slide of the gun until you're ready to shoot. Number 4 is we're going to keep the firearm unloaded until we're ready to use it, with the only exceptions to that being your carry gun, your concealed carry gun that you have on your person, or the gun maybe you have bedside at home, staged in the house for home protection, which I would recommend get a safe for it, something where, if someone ends up in your house that, or you have kids or whatever that shouldn't have access to that gun, that you have quick access to it, but they cannot access it. And then rule number 5, know what's in front of, beyond, and beside your target. And if you follow these gun safety laws, you will be headed in the right direction to have a safe range experience, a safe firearms experience. And it's just, you can't break these guys. If you, the way these laws are designed is so that typically have to break 2 of them. You have to break at least 2 of them for something bad to happen. So make sure you don't break any of these, and if you don't, you should have a great day at the range and a great time handling your firearm. So Loren from Hold the Line Defense Solutions, hope that helped, and we'll see you out on the range. Have a great day.